We now have the presentation by Shri Nalin Bansal, Head of RuPay, NCMC and FSIT at National Payments Corporation of India, NPCI. Shri Nalin is a product and business strategy professional with a rich experience of 20 plus years on global assignments covering technology, telecom, and payments domain. He has spearheaded the launch of many initiatives in the telecom and payments business and incubated new age payment solutions with organizations like Airtel, MasterCard, and NPCI. He has also been an advisor to multiple startups for their go to market strategy. He started his career with Bharti Airtel in 2001 and was a part of India's telecom revolution. He had been responsible for spearheading some key projects for Airtel, which included strategic outsourcing, telecom rollouts, tower cost optimization, and GIS-based market planning. Later, as part of the principal team at Bharti Group, he evaluated and executed projects in new areas like DTH, mobile wallets, and international acquisitions. At MasterCard, he led the product launch for their bill payments platform in India. Presently, he is serving as Chief of Corporate Business and Key Initiatives at National Payments Corporation of India, NPCI. Under his leadership, NPCI was able to swiftly launch the prestigious Bharat Bill Payment System (BBPS) platform for Reserve Bank of India, National Common Mobility Card for transit operators and smart cities, and rolled out solutions in the area of contactless payments, secure online commerce, and tokenization at NPCI. He has been contributed extensively in building the ecosystem of payments enabling governments, corporates, merchants, MSMEs, and driving consumption for consumers in all segments. In his current role, he is tasked to set up partnerships to drive new cases for fintech, startups, and merchants, and not just in payments, but also in areas of loyalty, analytics, and identification. And over to you, sir, for your presentation.
Hi, welcome everyone. Uh, my name is Nalin Bansal, and today I'm going to present to you some of our learnings that we've had in the Indian ecosystem on implementing open loop ticketing and the National Common Mobility Card. Before getting there, just a brief on RuPay contactless and what we have built as a product which supports the transit payments in the country. It's a first of its kind EMV based contactless card, which has a card wallet built in it, very similar to other closed loop cards that you have in the market. The reason why we did this was that there was a problem statement of digitizing low value cash payments, which are about 100 million in a day as far as India is concerned. And we wanted to drastically cut down the transaction time from 10 to 12 seconds to less than 1 second. Also, we wanted to make sure that wherever such payment requirements are needed, whether it is in transit, low value cash payments, there is a single mode of payment that is used to make those payments rather than paying cash or closed loop cards. So the key consideration that we took up was that these cards should be instantaneously paid out, interoperable, no network dependency, single payment instrument, and most importantly, it should be integrated into an existing payment method, which means you shouldn't be carrying a new card every time you're looking at a small value payment. Your existing debit, credit, and prepaid card should be able to operate. So the hero of this entire solution is the card, which means the card has a wallet which stores a certain value, very similar to a closed loop card. And when the card is tapped on the terminal, the transaction is conducted within a second, assuming there is account on card. So there is no authorization required and the card transaction gets completed there and then, and the wallet balance is deducted and updated. All this happens in 300 to 400 milliseconds, which is very ideal for a metro ecosystem. So eventually, the card therefore introduces what in terms of USP, it has a stored value concept of offline prepaid wallet. It works on existing standards of EMV, so you don't need different kind of terminals or different kind of specifications. Your existing EMV terminals and cards can operate. It can be integrated into existing debit, credit, or prepaid cards. And most importantly, and that's the most important thing from transit point of view, that it allows additional storage areas other than the wallet. It allows additional storage area for you to support your pass writing, for you to support other use cases that you may have from a transit ecosystem perspective. You can do daily passes, you can do monthly passes, you can even do loyalty points. So it opens up a whole range of use cases for the card rather than just using them for retail shopping and online shopping. Metros, buses, toll, parking, campuses, gas stations, charging stations. We now using EV charging stations are coming up, which would require this card to be, where you can get into the line and get out after your charging is completed, and of course all the regular use cases. So having dealt into what RuPay contactless is and what NCMC offers as a functionality, I just want to spend a little bit of time on 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 sort of setting the stage on what is interoperability really, what is open loop, what is closed loop. Interoperability from a payments point of view is the ability of certain group of people, whether these can be consumers or merchants, to operate in conjunction with each other without having any common entity between them, which means that I could be a customer of bank A and the person I'm paying or the merchant I'm paying could be a customer of bank B. Without bank A being connected to bank B, they can talk to each other and they can make or accept payments. How is it relevant to transit ticketing? So by issuing a open loop card, which is accepted in an operator A, an open loop payment ensures that when the consumer goes to operator B or operator C, he's able to use the same card without having to pick up a fare media of the operator that he's going into. Now, this is very relevant in the Indian ecosystem where we're looking at close to 30 plus metro operators across the country. We have almost 100 plus bus operators operating within the Indian ecosystem, and many such entities where mobility is important, and I need to use a transit payment. I need to make a transit payment. And therefore, imagine a consumer which is traveling 3, 2, 4, 5 such operators, he will need to be carrying 5, 6 cards. So it was therefore important to bring in interoperability in the Indian ecosystem. Now, while the fare media and payments converge into a single form factor, which means that both your ticket and your payment is now on that bank card, the interoperability of that ticket can also be now enabled, which means that I can now issue tickets or I can now issue fare, which can work together on two operators, as long as they have shared, they have shared their, pricing tables, they've shared their route tables. A consumer doesn't need to tap in and tap out multiple times. He can tap in once and he can tap out once and travel in between operators, and he will get one consolidated charge. So with this common payment mode, the aggregation of various tickets is now also possible. Now, of course, if you do that, it brings in standardization of equipment. Operators don't need to implement multiple types of formats and standards, and then they can just work towards enabling one single standard wherever they are going live. Now, while there is interoperability now brought into the Indian ecosystem, there are certain pilots that are being conducted, and there are distinct advantages of using a open loop card in the transit ecosystem, especially in India. The problem is still out there. The problem is still not resolved. Still today, a lot of payments are made using cash. or closed or semi-closed cards. While QR ticketing has taken up to some extent, but it is still not widely accepted. Um, though the market size is really huge, there are about 100 million low value transactions, like I mentioned earlier, which are happening in a day. Um, Most importantly, when such transactions go online for authorization, there is a distinct possibility of these transactions getting declined because there is the amount of authorization that will reach a server or a banking ecosystem, they are likely to get declined. Therefore, it is even more important to ensure that these transactions are conducted in offline mode. For mobile-based payment, while, like I said, the QR ticketing has now made some inroads into the operators. Almost everybody has a QR acceptance, but there has been no standardization on the QR ticketing, which means that every operator is deploying their own standards of QR. They're having to do their own method of digitization. Consumers have to download different apps for different operators and different levels of QRs are generated. So there is like there is interoperability that has now come in on the card side. There is now the opportunity for the market to respond and look at standardized QR across operators. So this is away from the card model, but this is a very important open element, and that needs to be addressed as we move along in our digitization journey. Now, while the card allows you to do single journey tickets, common fare tickets, it also, like I mentioned earlier, has the concept of service area, where if some operator would like to store a pass or consumer would like to buy a pass, it can be stored in that specific survey area on the card, so that, and it could be time based, it could be number of trips based, or any other rule that the operator has, so that when the consumer comes next time around, rather than using his offline wallet or stored value on the card, it will check for the operator service area and check for the validity of the service area and allow the consumer to travel or not to travel depending on the validity of that pass. So it not just allows all those advantages to a common card, it also allows operators to store their passes on the card. I think all of us are aware on the differences. It was important that we call that out. Um, the most important benefit, and that's a consumer. If we look at the consumer lens of it, um, a consumer is going to use a card more often if it allows him to do many things using the same card, which means that if I'm going to ask him or push him to carry different cards for different purposes, he is going to eventually move to cash, because cash is accepted as a single currency across anything that he has to pay. So unless his card becomes a common payment mode across whatever he does in his daily routine, we will always have the challenge of replacing cash. Therefore, from a consumer lens, it is super important that we allow everyday daily payments to come on the card, and that includes transit most importantly. The other advantage, the large advantage, which is very obvious, is that open loop cards are driven by highly secure standards set out by EMV, and operators don't have to worry about customized implementations or locked in license based implementations, which a lot of operators have been facing with, as we've seen in the past. So they will have the flexibility like a merchant has today to change their bank, change their machines, change without having to worry about whether the cards will work or not work. Now, within the open loop cards, there has always been this debate on account based and card based. And it is not so much about what is better and what is superior. I think it is a case of what is more relevant in the scenario that you're operating in. As an industry, this debate was well conducted about 6-7 years ago, and it was well understood that in a country like India, card-based mechanisms would tend to be better suited given the kind of diaspora we have. Especially when people don't like to keep balances in their account, very similar to their car mobile number, they keep changing their bank accounts, or they will have multiple bank accounts with no activation. And it is a country which is well versed with prepaid concept, where I put in money when I need it and then I use it. So keeping these considerations in mind, it was then decided and it was agreed that as an industry we will follow the card-based model, which means keeping the balance on the card rather than on the server, and move along in that direction. And I think some of the early signs of early experiences that have come out of the implementation we've done has reaffirmed our belief that was the better decision given the market we operate in. While in some of the other markets, account-based models have been implemented, they seem to be doing okay, or they are looking at some revisions. But as far as the Indian subcontinent is concerned, this has been the most preferred choice of technology. So very quickly, just some use cases. In case of buses, this can be implemented in a tap in and a tap out mode, or it can be also implemented within the bus itself, where I have a validator on the pole, and I can tap in when I enter on the pole, and I can tap out on the pole when I exit. And third, of course, you have handheld machines. It's a one-time payment. There's a ticket price, and I pay that price using my offline wallet, or I can even pay that ticket price as a standard regular transaction. Metro, which is very common, and the most preferred model is the tap in, the tap out. So you tap in at a entry station and you tap out at the exit station. And of course, like I explained earlier, it also has the functionality of storing your monthly pass. So just a broad diagram on the implementation. I think you have customers of banks who have been issued a debit, credit, or a prepaid card with the functionality of NCMC inbuilt on the card. And then there'll be customers who are not banking with anyone, or they do not have a card which has this functionality. So for customers who have this functionality, they will be using that card and getting into a transit ecosystem and tapping in or buying a ticket using that offline balance. For customers who do not have a card, will likely to be picking up an instant co-branded card that can be issued by the operator. So that's an optional service that the operator can give, just in case the customer is not carrying an existing debit credit card which is NCMC enabled. This also allows additional business line and revenue lines for the operator and the banking partner that he has, and takes care of any coverage gap on the consumer side. Now, once the consumer enters, like I said, they can tap in, tap out into the transit ecosystem. And once the transit ecosystem, once it taps out, the AFC will calculate the fare on the tap out machine and deduct it from the card. Once that is deducted from the card, that transaction is sent to the acquiring bank of the transit operator. And that's an important partner that the transit operator will have, who will then pick up that transaction at a later point in time. Like I said, these are offline transactions. They're not required to be sent immediately. And it is sent to a network, let's say in this case, it is NPCI, to collect the funds from the issuer of the card, whoever is the issuer of the card. And then deposited back in the account of the operator. So this is the typical four-party model. The only thing is there is no online transaction leg required. All that is needed is the settlement of the transaction. So quickly, what are the possible provisions that the operator will have to do? They can have the option of having a bank for issuance of instant co-branded NCMC card for customers who are not carrying a card. You need to have an acquiring bank for digital fare collection, which means that acquiring bank will pick up all your card transactions, settle it with the issuer of the card to give you back the funds. This is the most important partner that you have. And then, of course, you need a ticketing service provider. And mind you, that is not your bank. It can be, but it is usually not, and it is preferred not to be your bank, who does your AFC integration with the acquiring interface. So just to more detail on it, on the acceptance side, therefore, you need to have devices which are EMV certified and as per NCMC specification. You need to have back office integration with your automatic fare collection. Now, your automatic fare collection could be your own, or you could be using a centralized or a cloud-based AFC system. And that software needs to be able to read the cards that are tapped on the device. You have to obviously select your partner bank on the acquiring side, which will allow you to receive your money, your funds in the account. And like I said, there can be an issuing bank for issuance of co-branded card, and that is if required, which can allow your consumers not carrying an existing bank card with NCMC to be issued on the spot. So just a list down of all the players in the solution: issuer for co-branded card, acquirer for acquiring, operators of course are the merchants here. Most importantly, apart from acquirer, are your AFC provider, and I'm still calling it out. This is not your bank, and it is recommended for this to be an independent entity. He is the one who supplies you the devices. He is the one who helps you deploy those devices. Of course, they have to be evenly compliant, and he's the one who creates the AFC application which can accept the card. So that's the most important part, because that's where the first point of contact or the last point of contact happens for the customer, and he is the one who creates the application on the device. So therefore, selection and choice of such a partner is very important. And then of course with NPCI, which is an indirect relation or the network, who will help you settle, give you a list of certified vendors, certified system providers, and settle all your financial transactions. Snapshot on how the journey has been so far. We've got roughly 25 debit and prepaid banks, roughly about 40 banks now in the market, which are issuing about 30 million RuPay contactless cards have been issued. 25 banks have been now acquiring on NCMC. And in the retail side, almost 1.52 million contact customers have now been rolled out. Projects that have gone live on open loop RuPay NCMC: Delhi Metro, Noida Metro, Mumbai Metro, Kochi Metro, Bangalore Metro is going live very soon, Nagpur Metro. So these are some of the projects that have gone live, and of course some smart cities as well. Now, while this is all started, it is yet to achieve scale. What is required is now standardization of business model, which is now already it has evolved, and it has now been understood and realized that exclusivity is not the right option. And why is it super important to accept all bank cards? Certain vendor ecosystem has been created on the AFC side. That was the missing link. We did not have enough AFC players supporting open loop payments, and their applications are not built in a fashion that they could accept open loop payments. So that standardization and creation of vendor base or supply ecosystem has been now created. And I think what is now important is that mass scale adoption should now rolled out with these standard service providers and business models. So just one slide, last slide before I move on and and you get the next person on this. Four pillars of focus areas. One is of course focusing on the indigenous payment system and saying open loop, having a low cost AFC, focusing on low cost devices which are made in India, and then of course faster adoption by the ecosystem. Some future variations that we are looking at, if the card can be tokenized on a mobile phone, then rather than tapping your card, you can tap your phone. People are the industry is very excited about this. This is in working progress and should be out very soon. Of course, it requires phones which have an NFC antenna, so not available on low cost phones. I already spoke about common QR based ticketing. It's important it's common QR spec and not distributed or independent QR spec. And of course, putting your card on a wearable, so not having to even fish out the card from your pocket. You can just tap your watch, you can tap your wearable, and you can travel. This is super useful in case of instantly issued cards where consumer doesn't have an NCMC or an open loop NCMC enabled card, and he can buy one on the spot and use it for his travel purposes. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. I hope this was of use and valuable insights, and looking forward to deployments in the future. Thank you.